The sun rose slowly over the wide-open ranch fields, spreading soft golden light across the dusty land. Every morning on this ranch looked the same, but today Tom felt something different in the air. Tom was a young cowboy with a quiet nature and a patient heart. He was not the strongest or the fastest worker, but he cared deeply for animals and treated them with gentle hands. As Tom walked toward the old wooden fence, he could already hear the workers talking loudly about the same creature they feared every day. Behind that fence lived the bull that no one could control. His name was Storm. Everyone said he was born wild, born furious, born dangerous. No trainer had managed to calm him, and no rider had stayed on his back for even a few seconds. Storm was known across the region as the bull that could break bones, break fences, and break spirits. Tom had heard these stories since he was a small boy. When he first came to this ranch for work, the older workers warned him many times. They said he should stay far away from Storm. They said Storm was a beast that felt only anger and knew only destruction. But Tom could not push aside a deep curiosity he felt inside. He wanted to understand Storm. He wanted to know why this bull was so full of rage. When Tom reached the fence that morning, he stopped and stared. Storm was already awake, standing in the center of the pen with his huge dark body shining under the early sun. His horns were wide and strong, and his muscles were tight like coiled ropes. Any man who looked at him could feel fear settle in his chest. But Tom saw something else. Storm's eyes were not filled with wild anger as everyone described. They were filled with something deeper, something darker, something sad. The bull stood without moving, staring directly at Tom. It was as if Storm had been waiting for him. Tom felt a strange pull in his heart. Storm's presence felt powerful, but not in a threatening way. It felt more like a cry for help that no one had ever heard. Tom stepped closer, moving slowly so he would not startle the bull. A ranch hand named Will shouted from far behind. He warned Tom to stay back. He said Storm was unpredictable and could strike without warning. But Tom did not turn away. He kept his eyes on Storm and raised his hand slowly, not to touch him but to show he meant no harm. Storm did not charge. He did not snort. He simply lowered his massive head slightly and watched Tom with eyes full of confusion. It felt like Storm recognized something in Tom that the others did not have. It felt like Storm was remembering something. The ground shook softly as Storm stepped toward the fence. Tom could feel the weight of the bull's presence, but he stayed calm. Storm stopped only a few steps away, close enough that Tom could hear his heavy breathing. Tom's heart beat fast, but not from fear. It beat fast because he felt a deep connection forming. Tom whispered quietly, not loud enough for anyone else to hear. He spoke gentle words, hoping Storm could feel the calm in his voice. For a moment it seemed like the air stopped moving. It was only Tom and Storm, standing in a silent understanding. Storm let out a slow, low breath. The sound was not aggressive or angry. It was tired, very tired. Tom could feel that Storm was carrying something heavy inside him, something that made him live with fear and rage. Tom felt a small pain in his chest when he looked into the bull's eyes. These were not the eyes of a creature born evil. These were the eyes of a creature that had suffered. As Tom stood there, he thought about all the stories he had heard. People talked about Storm like he was an unstoppable storm of rage, a beast with no heart. But Tom did not believe that. Tom believed that every animal had a reason for its behavior. Every creature was shaped by its past. Tom wanted to know Storm's past. Storm took another step closer, then lowered his head gently toward the lower plank of the fence. This was unusual. Storm never approached the fence willingly. Workers usually had to use strong barriers just to bring him close enough for feeding. Tom carefully placed his hand near the fence, not touching the bull, but letting him know he was not a threat. Storm's nostrils flared as he sniffed the air around Tom's hand. He did not pull back. He did not show any sign of aggression. Inside the barn, the other workers were watching with disbelief. They had never seen Storm behave this way. They whispered among themselves, wondering what Tom was doing differently. Some thought Tom was foolish, others thought he was lucky, but none of them understood what was happening. Tom did not pay attention to the whispers. He kept his focus on Storm, waiting patiently. He had learned long ago that patience was the key to earning trust from any animal. Storm raised his head again, his eyes locked on Tom's for the first time. Tom saw not anger but sorrow. A soft breeze moved across the ranch, carrying the smell of dust and grass. Storm blinked slowly and stepped back, almost as if he wanted to say something but could not. Tom felt a warmth inside him. He promised in his heart that he would return the next day, and the day after, and the day after that, until he understood Storm completely. Tom turned to leave, but before he did, he looked back one more time. Storm was still watching him, not with violence, but with a strange kind of longing. Tom did not know what Storm needed, but he knew he wanted to find out. As Tom walked across the ranch toward the barn, he felt a deep sense of purpose rising inside him. He did not want to tame Storm for fame or money. He wanted to help Storm heal. He wanted to uncover the truth behind Storm's rage, and he had a feeling that truth would be more painful than anyone expected. Near the barn door, Will approached Tom. Will asked what Tom thought he was doing. He said Storm was dangerous. He said Tom must keep distance. Tom listened quietly. Then he said he felt something different in Storm. He said Storm was not angry without reason. Will shook his head, not convinced, but Tom stood firm. Something inside him told him that Storm's story was not what they believed. As Tom finished his chores and walked back to his small cabin near the forest edge, he kept thinking about Storm's eyes. Those eyes held a memory, a secret, a wound. Something terrible had happened to Storm long ago. Something that had turned a young bull into a creature feared by all. Tom knew he would not rest until he uncovered the truth. And deep inside the pen, Storm stood alone, watching the path Tom had taken until the cowboy disappeared from view. Storm let out a soft breath, a breath that carried years of hidden pain. The bull had recognized Tom. Tom did not know it yet, but this was the beginning of a bond that would change both of their lives forever. The next morning, Tom woke before the sun. He washed his face, put on his dusty boots, and walked out of his small cabin. The air was cool, and a thin layer of mist floated over the fields. The ranch was quiet except for the soft sounds of cows waking in distant pens. Tom felt a strange excitement in his chest. He had spent many days on this ranch, but no morning felt as important as this one. He walked toward Storm's pen with steady steps. When he reached the fence, he saw Storm standing there already. The bull was not pacing or kicking the dirt. He was waiting in complete stillness. Tom felt Storm had sensed him coming before he even arrived. Storm lifted his head when Tom approached. Their eyes met across the fence, and Tom saw the same sadness he had seen the day before. But this time there was something new. There was trust. Not full trust, but a small spark of it. Tom moved slowly, letting Storm see every step he took. He carried a bucket of fresh water and a brush he had borrowed from the barn. Storm's ears twitched, but he did not move away. Tom placed the bucket near the fence and stepped back, giving Storm space. Storm walked forward and drank from the bucket. Tom watched quietly. The other workers had tried to bring Storm close before, but they always used strong ropes, loud whips, or harsh voices. Storm always fought back. But now, without force, he came on his own. Tom felt a soft smile grow on his face. While Storm drank, Tom noticed something important. Every time a loud sound came from the barn or a heavy object dropped somewhere, Storm flinched. His body would tighten, and his eyes would widen in fear. Storm was not angry by nature. He was scared. Tom understood this clearly now. The ranch owner, Mr. Grant, walked up to the fence with his usual stern expression. He folded his arms and watched Tom with narrowed eyes. "What do you think you're doing?" Mr. Grant asked in a rough tone. Tom explained gently that Storm reacted better to kindness. He said the bull needed patience, not force. Mr. Grant shook his head. He said Storm was too far gone, that years of rage could not be undone. But Tom did not agree. Storm looked up from the water and stared at Tom again. Tom felt something deep inside him stir. It was a feeling he could not ignore. After Mr. Grant walked away, Tom sat down on the ground just outside the pen. He did not enter. He wanted Storm to choose the distance. Storm watched him for a while. The bull's ears flicked, and his tail moved slowly back and forth. Minutes passed with only the sound of soft breathing between them. Then Storm took a few steps forward until he stood near the fence again. He lowered his head and sniffed toward Tom. Tom kept his hands still and his voice soft. He spoke calmly, telling Storm he was safe, that no one would hurt him here. Storm let out a long breath. Tom knew animals well enough to understand that this breath was not anger. It was relief, a quiet release of fear. Tom gently lifted the brush and held it up. Storm eyed it carefully. Tom did not push. He waited. After a slow moment, Storm took half a step closer. Tom reached through the fence and brushed the bull's neck softly. Storm tensed for a second, then relaxed. Tom continued brushing with slow strokes. Dust and old dirt loosened from Storm's coat. The bull closed his eyes for a few seconds, enjoying the gentle touch. For an animal that had known only fear and pain, this kindness must have felt like a warm memory returning. As Tom brushed, he saw several scars across Storm's neck and back. Some were old, healed marks. Others were deep lines that spoke of rough handling in the past. Tom's chest tightened. These scars told a story, more painful than words. Storm had suffered greatly. Tom wanted to understand every part of Storm's past. He believed there was a reason for the bull's behavior. Something had shaped him into what he was now. Later that afternoon, after finishing his other chores, Tom went to the barn to find Sam, the older worker who knew more than anyone about animals. Sam had wrinkles on his face, but his eyes held wisdom and kindness. Tom asked Sam if he knew anything about Storm's past. Sam sighed and leaned against a wooden post. He told Tom that Storm had not always belonged to this ranch. Years ago, Storm lived on a different ranch far away. The owner of that ranch was known for harsh training. He believed fear made animals stronger. He used heavy ropes and loud metal tools. Many animals suffered under his care. Storm was just a young bull when he arrived there. Sam said he had heard from friends that Storm was gentle in the beginning, but as time passed, the harsh treatment broke him. He learned to fight because fighting was the only way he could protect himself. Tom felt anger rise in his chest, but he kept his face calm. He thanked Sam and walked back toward Storm's pen. Every step felt heavy. Tom could picture a small young bull shaking in fear while loud tools struck the ground around him. He could picture Storm learning that anyone who approached him might bring pain. Tom reached the fence again. Storm stood near the center of the pen, watching Tom with open curiosity. Tom rested his arms on the fence and spoke softly to him. Storm came closer, step by slow step. His breathing was steady, and his eyes were quiet. Tom felt a deep warmth in his heart. Storm had chosen to trust him. It was late afternoon now. The sun painted the sky with warm colors of orange and gold. Storm lowered his head and touched the fence gently with his nose. Tom lifted his hand and let Storm sniff him again. Storm did not back away. Tom spoke with a steady voice. He told Storm that he understood now. He told him that he was not angry at him. He knew Storm had suffered. He knew the bull did not want to hurt anyone. He knew Storm was only trying to survive in a world that had hurt him. Storm let out a soft, low sound. It was not a warning. It was a response. A quiet answer to Tom's words. Tom stayed near the fence until the sun began to set. The sky turned dark purple, and stars appeared slowly above. Storm stayed close the whole time, never walking far. Before leaving, Tom placed his hand gently on Storm's forehead through the fence. Storm closed his eyes for a moment. For Tom, that small moment felt like a promise. A promise of trust. A promise of healing. A promise that this was only the beginning of something deep. Tom walked back to his cabin as night settled across the ranch. He kept thinking about Storm's scars, his fear of loud sounds, and the way he had slowly opened his heart. Tom knew he was making progress, but he also knew the road ahead was long. Storm carried heavy memories. Memories that would take time to heal. But Tom was ready. He would not give up. Inside the pen, Storm lay down near the fence for the first time. He rested near the spot where Tom had stood so many hours. It was clear now Storm did not fear Tom. He trusted him, and tomorrow, that trust would grow even more. The next morning, Tom woke with a strong feeling in his chest. It was not fear and not excitement. It was something deeper. He felt a responsibility. Storm was more than just a bull now. Storm had become a creature who needed him, trusted him, watched him, and waited for him. Tom finished his morning chores faster than usual, eager to reach Storm's pen. When he walked toward the fence, he noticed something surprising. Storm was already standing near the front corner, as if he had been waiting for Tom since sunrise. Storm lifted his head slowly. His dark eyes followed Tom's every movement. Tom felt a warm calm in his heart. Storm no longer behaved like a creature filled with anger. He behaved like an animal who had finally found someone who understood him. Tom sat down near the fence again. Not entering the pen yet, he wanted Storm to feel comfortable enough to choose a distance. Storm stepped closer with slow, steady steps. His hooves made soft thuds against the ground, but there was no tension in his body. Tom could see how far Storm had come in only a few days. Tom reached out with his brush. Storm lowered his head, allowing Tom to stroke along the side of his face. The bull's breathing grew soft and slow. Tom brushed with gentle hands, smoothing Storm's coat while speaking in a warm voice. The other workers watched from a distance. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Others whispered among themselves, wondering how Storm had changed so much in such a short time. No one had ever gotten close enough to Storm without a strong rope and several men standing ready. Yet Tom sat alone with him, brushing his coat like they were old partners. Tom continued brushing until Storm's coat shone under the sun. Then Tom stood up and walked slowly toward the gate. He paused, waiting to see Storm's reaction. Storm watched him closely, but he did not step back. His muscles did not tighten. Tom opened the gate slowly. The hinges creaked and Storm flinched slightly. Tom waited until Storm relaxed again. Then he stepped inside. His heart beat fast, but his steps were steady. He had entered the pen for the first time. The workers held their breath as they watched. Many expected Storm to charge, but the bull did nothing. He simply turned his head toward Tom and watched calmly. Tom stayed close to the fence at first, giving Storm space. Storm walked toward him with quiet, heavy steps. Tom held out his hand. Storm touched his nose gently to Tom's palm. It was a powerful moment. For the first time in years, Storm allowed a human to come close, without fear, without anger. Tom felt his chest tighten. He whispered softly, praising Storm for his bravery. Storm's ears flicked, and he leaned his head lightly against Tom's arm. Tom brushed Storm again, this time from inside the pen. Storm stood still, not moving even when birds flew overhead or workers shouted across the ranch. The bull's trust had grown stronger with every passing moment. After brushing, Tom sat on the ground. Storm lowered his huge body slowly and rested beside him. Tom had never imagined that the most feared bull on the ranch would lie down calmly next to him. The workers stared in silence. Sam, the older worker, shook his head and smiled. He knew something special had begun. Tom stayed with Storm for a long time, watching the sun rise higher into the sky. He gently touched the scars on Storm's neck and back. Each scar told a painful story, one Tom wished he could erase. Storm had lived through more suffering than any creature deserved. Tom wanted to help him heal. Later that day, Tom asked Sam more questions about Storm's past. Sam told him that the ranch Storm came from had been sold years ago. Some animals had been treated badly, and Storm was one of the worst cases. Sam said Storm had once been tied with heavy ropes. Loud metal tools were used near him every day. Storm had been forced to obey through fear. Tom clenched his fists. The thought of Storm suffering like that made his heart ache. Sam placed a gentle hand on Tom's shoulder and told him that his patience was giving Storm something he had never known before. Safety. Tom returned to Storm's pen with a small bucket of oats. Storm sniffed the bucket and nudged Tom's arm lightly. Tom laughed softly and poured the oats into a long, flat feeder. Storm ate slowly, staying close to Tom. For the next few days, Tom spent hours with Storm. He talked to him while brushing his coat. He walked slowly beside him in the pen. He allowed Storm to guide the pace. Storm began to follow Tom like a shadow. Wherever Tom went inside the pen, Storm walked behind him, calm and steady. One afternoon, Tom decided to try something new. He picked up a long rope, not to tie Storm, but to see how Storm reacted. The moment Storm saw the rope, his entire body stiffened. His eyes widened with fear. Tom quickly dropped the rope and stepped back. Storm snorted loudly and backed away, trembling. His hooves dug into the ground. Tom spoke softly, telling Storm everything was fine. It took minutes for Storm to calm down. Tom felt his heart break. The bull's reaction told Tom everything he needed to know. The rope was a symbol of Storm's past pain. Storm had not forgotten. Tom walked to the fence and sat down, letting Storm see that he meant no harm. After a while, Storm came closer again, shaking slightly. Tom rubbed his neck gently, helping him relax. Tom whispered that he would never use a rope on him. Storm leaned his head against Tom's shoulder in quiet acceptance. Tom realized Storm was not just healing. Storm was remembering. Tom knew now more than ever that Storm's past was filled with fear. Storm had been taught to defend himself because no one had shown him kindness. Until now, days passed, and Storm's behavior continued to improve. He no longer paced his pen at night. He no longer cried out when workers moved equipment. Instead, he waited each morning for Tom to arrive. One evening, Tom stayed longer than usual. The sun was setting gently, painting the sky with soft colors. Tom sat inside the pen, leaning against the wooden fence. Storm rested beside him with his eyes half closed. It was the most peaceful moment Tom had seen since he came to the ranch. Tom spoke quietly, telling Storm he would never leave him. Storm's ear twitched, as if he understood every word. Tom felt a strange certainty in his heart. Storm was not just an animal he was helping. Their bond was deeper. Storm recognized him in a way Tom could not explain yet. Storm lifted his head and nudged Tom's arm gently. Tom smiled and stroked the bull's huge head. The connection between them felt natural, as if they had known each other long ago. Tom did not understand why he felt that way, but the answer was coming. A truth hidden in Storm's past. A truth that would bring tears to Tom's eyes when he discovered it. Night fell across the ranch. Storm lay down near Tom, and Tom rested his hand on Storm's shoulder. Their bond was growing, and soon, Tom would learn the real reason Storm trusted him more than anyone. The sun rose slowly over the ranch, casting warm light across the open fields. The sky glowed in soft orange and gold, and the land looked peaceful, as if it had forgotten all the fear that once followed the raging bull. But inside the wooden barn, peace was still far away. The bull named Storm stood alone in his stall, breathing deeply, watching every sound with alert eyes. The cowboy named Sam walked toward the barn with steady steps. His face looked tired, but also calm. Anyone who saw him could tell he had not slept properly, but his heart felt lighter than before. He now knew why Storm had been wild for so long. The truth had shaken him, but it also gave him new hope. The Storm was not dangerous for no reason. Storm was hurting, and that pain had turned into fear and anger. Sam reached the barn door and held the old handle. He paused, took a long breath, and stepped inside. The barn was quiet. Dust floated gently in the air, and the soft sound of Storm's breathing filled the space. Storm lifted his head sharply when Sam entered. His strong muscles tightened and he stomped the ground once, but Sam did not step back. He stayed calm, showing Storm that he was not a threat. Sam spoke in a soft voice that echoed gently across the barn. "I'm here, friend. I'm not going to harm you." Storm's ears twitched at the sound of the cowboy's voice. For the first time, there was no violence in Storm's response. He simply watched. His eyes, once filled with fire, now showed confusion and something close to sadness. Sam moved closer, one slow step at a time. He held no rope, no stick, nothing that could scare the bull. His hands were empty, and his heart was open. He reached the stall door and leaned on the wooden rail. Storm's eyes followed every movement, but he did not charge. Instead, he lowered his head just a little, listening. Sam placed one hand on the top of the rail. "I found the old brand mark on your side. I know now. You were taken from your mother too early. You were treated rough. They forced you to work before you were ready. No one gave you kindness." Storm made a low sound, almost like a deep sigh. Sam continued, his voice full of gentleness. "No one should be treated that way, not even a bull as strong as you. I understand why you fought everyone. You had no way to speak your pain. Storm stepped closer, his hooves hitting the ground with a slow rhythm. Sam did not move away. He held his ground, steady and calm, hoping Storm was ready to trust. The bull stood right before him now, separated only by the wooden rail. Sam looked into Storm's eyes. They were deep brown, full of emotion, full of things no one had noticed before. Storm was not just a wild creature. Storm was a living soul who had felt fear and loss. Sam slowly stretched out his hand. His fingers shook a little, not from fear, but from respect. He knew this moment mattered. Storm looked at the hand, then lifted his head. For a brief second, Sam thought the bull might turn away or get tense again. Instead, Storm leaned forward and gently touched Sam's hand with his nose. The touch was soft and warm. Sam felt his heart tremble. It was the first sign of trust Storm had ever given to any human. Tears filled Sam's eyes, but he held them back. He wanted to stay strong in front of Storm. "Thank you," he whispered. Storm snorted lightly and stepped even closer. Sam slowly moved his hand to the bull's forehead and placed it gently on the smooth fur. Storm closed his eyes for a moment. It was as if he finally felt safe, even if only for a few seconds. Sam stood like that for a long time, his hand resting on Storm's head, the barn quiet around them. It was a moment of healing, a moment that changed everything. After some time, Sam stepped back and gave Storm space. "I won't rush you. We'll take things slow. I will help you feel safe again." Storm watched him, calm and silent. Sam left the stall and went to prepare fresh hay and clean water. He moved with care, making sure Storm could see everything he was doing. He did not want the bull to feel surprised or threatened by sudden actions. Storm watched every step, but his body stayed relaxed. While Sam worked, his mind kept returning to the painful truth he had learned the day before. Storm had been mistreated by his old owner, forced to train early, beaten when he refused, pushed until he fought back. He was labeled dangerous when he was only scared. No one took the time to understand him. Sam wiped sweat from his forehead and looked at Storm again. "That ends now," he whispered. "I'll make sure you never face that again." Later, Sam walked out of the barn and found the ranch owner waiting for him beside the fence. The owner looked older today, worried and thoughtful. Well, the owner asked, "How did it go this morning? Did Storm calm down?" Sam nodded. "Yes, he's starting to trust. It'll take more time, but he's changing." The owner sighed with relief. "I'm glad to hear that. I've seen many bulls in my life, but none like him. If anyone can help him, it's you." Sam looked back at the barn. He doesn't need force. He needs patience. He needs kindness. The ranch owner nodded slowly. "If that's what it takes, then do it. Just keep yourself safe." Sam gave a small smile. "I'll be careful." He spent the rest of the day working around the ranch but never stayed far from the barn. Every hour he returned to check on Storm. Sometimes he sat by the stall and talked. Sometimes he just let Storm watch him from inside. Storm seemed less tense each time. As evening approached, Sam brought a bucket of water and placed it close enough for Storm to reach. The bull walked to it calmly and drank. "You're strong," Sam said softly. "You survived a lot, but you don't have to fight anymore." Storm lifted his head and looked at Sam. The barn lights cast a warm glow over his dark coat. The bull looked proud, powerful, and yet gentle in that moment. Sam felt hope rise inside him. For the first time since the journey began, he believed Storm could become something more than a fierce legend. He could become a partner, a friend. Night settled over the ranch, the sky filled with stars. The wind moved softly through the fields, carrying the fresh smell of grass. Everyone went inside their homes, but Sam stayed outside a little longer. He leaned against the barn door and listened to Storm moving quietly inside. There were no loud stomps or angry snorts anymore, just calm breathing. Sam whispered into the quiet night, "Tomorrow will be better. We'll start fresh, I promise." Inside the barn, as if understanding the words, Storm gave one gentle sound before settling down. For the first time in many years, the raging bull slept in peace. The next morning arrived with a warm breeze and soft golden light. Birds sang above the ranch and the fields shined with fresh dew. It was the kind of morning that made everything feel new. Sam walked toward the barn with quiet steps, feeling a gentle hope inside his chest. He did not know what the day would bring, but he knew he was ready. Storm stood inside the stall, calm and steady. When Sam entered the barn, Storm lifted his head but did not tense. His powerful body remained relaxed, and his deep eyes watched Sam with something close to trust. Sam smiled softly. "Morning, friend. Ready for a new day?" Storm flicked his tail and breathed out through his nose in a steady sound. It was not a warning. It was almost like a greeting. Sam walked slowly to the stall and placed his hand on the wooden rail. Storm stepped closer without hesitation. Sam gently touched the bull's forehead. Storm did not move away. It was another sign that the bond between them was growing stronger. Sam whispered, "We're going to try something new today, only if you feel ready." He opened the stall door just a little. Storm watched him but did not panic. Sam stepped inside slowly and stood beside him. It was the first time anyone had entered the stall with Storm without fear or ropes. Storm lowered his head, Sam placed his hand on the bull's neck and moved it slowly along the fur. The bull's breathing stayed calm. A soft peace filled the stall. "You're doing great," Sam said with gentle pride. After spending some quiet minutes together, Sam stepped back and opened the stall door completely. Storm looked at the open space. He had usually reacted with force whenever he felt free to move, but now he stayed still, waiting. Tam pointed toward the open barn door. "Come with me." No rush. Storm took one step forward, then another. Sam walked beside him, letting Storm match his pace. The two moved slowly out of the barn and into the fresh morning air. The sunlight hit Storm's coat, making it shine. The bull lifted his head as the open field stretched in front of him. The wind brushed against him, carrying scents of grass and earth. For a moment, he looked like a creature reborn. Sam stood beside him, giving him space and letting him explore. Storm did not charge, did not kick, did not show any wild anger. He simply breathed deeply and walked with calm steps that Sam watched with a warm smile. "This is your place now, a place where no one will harm you." Storm moved toward the field, and Sam walked beside him with confidence. They reached a wide open area where the morning sun warmed the land. Sam stood still and waited for Storm to decide what to do. Storm lowered his head and began to graze. It was such a simple act, yet it showed how relaxed he was. The bull, who once fought everything, now stood peacefully by the cowboy's side. After some time, Sam gently placed his hand on Storm's back. The bull did not react with fear. Instead, he leaned slightly into the touch. That small movement made Sam feel proud, almost emotional. He whispered to himself, "You're healing, finally." Across the field, the ranch owner approached. He walked slowly, not wanting to disturb the moment. When he reached Sam, he spoke in a low voice. "I never expected this. Look at him. He's a different bull." Sam nodded. He just needed patience and understanding. He needed someone to see his pain. The ranch owner watched quietly as Storm grazed with calm confidence. "What will you do with him now?" Sam thought for a moment. "I want to train him. Not for shows or contests. Just simple work. He's strong and smart. If he trusts people again, he can live a good life here." The ranch owner smiled. "Do whatever you feel is right. You earned my trust too." Sam returned his attention to Storm. The bull lifted his head and looked at him, as if waiting for the next step. Sam walked forward and Storm followed. They moved slowly across the field, walking side by side. Sam kept speaking in a calm voice. Storm stayed close, his powerful steps matching the cowboy's pace. It felt like the beginning of a new partnership when they reached a training area. Sam set down a rope on the ground but did not pick it up. He did not want to rush Storm. He simply walked in a large circle and waited for the bull to understand. Storm followed him, copying the movement. His large body moved with surprising grace. Sam smiled. "Good, you're learning fast." For almost an hour, Sam trained Storm with soft-spoken instructions and steady gestures. Storm never showed anger. He seemed proud to understand, proud to follow. It was as if he wanted to show Sam that he could be trusted too. When they finished, Sam let him rest in the shade of a tall tree. Storm lay down on the grass, something he rarely did in open spaces. It meant he felt safe. Sam sat beside him. The wind moved gently around them. Birds flew above. The ranch felt peaceful. Sam looked at Storm's old scar on his side, the one left by harsh treatment many years ago. When he first discovered that scar, it broke his heart. But now, seeing Storm calm and healing, the pain in Sam's heart slowly turned into strength. "You're not alone anymore," Sam said softly. "I'm here. As long as I'm around, no one will harm you." Storm lifted his head and looked at Sam. His eyes were not wild anymore. They held trust, real trust. As the day passed, Sam and Storm walked around the ranch together. Other workers watched from a distance, amazed by the change. They whispered to each other, "Look at that. The bull is gentle now. How did he do it?" Sam did not mind their surprise. He knew the truth. Storm was never a bad bull. Storm was misunderstood. Everyone saw a raging creature, but no one saw the hurt inside him until Sam did. By late afternoon, the sky turned orange. Long shadows stretched across the land. Sam brought Storm back to the barn. The bull walked beside him willingly. There was no force, no fear. Inside the barn, Storm entered his stall and stood calmly. Sam filled the water bucket and placed fresh hay. Storm ate with steady comfort. Sam leaned on the wooden rail and watched him with warm eyes. "You're strong, Storm. Strong in body and strong in heart. You survived hard times. Now you'll live a peaceful life." Storm looked up at him, and Sam felt a deep connection. It was not the bond of a man controlling an animal. It was the bond of two living souls who understood each other's pain and strength. Before leaving for the night, Sam placed his hand gently on Storm's head. Storm closed his eyes for a moment, showing that he accepted the touch. Sam whispered one last time, "You're free now, truly free." He closed the barn door softly and looked up at the starry sky. The wind carried a cool scent across the ranch. Sam felt proud, relieved, and full of hope. The raging bull, once feared by everyone, had found peace, and the cowboy who discovered the truth behind his anger would never forget the moment. Storm finally trusted him. Their journey was long, painful, and full of difficult steps, but it ended with understanding, kindness, and healing. A bull once full of rage, a cowboy with a soft heart, and a bond that changed both their lives forever.